Good afternoon, debaters. Good afternoon, judge, and to everybody who is viewing this debate on the live stream on our YouTube channel. I'm Ayush Sahai from Debaters Guild. I'll be your moderator for today's debate. The motion presented to us in front of us today is the House believes that China should grant independence to the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. And I sincerely believe that I will not be granted a Chinese visa after this. Our judge today will be Mr. Sachin Kishan. Sachin Kishan is a high school graduate with a passion for debating. He has an experience of debating for over 5 years. He's been head of the Debate Club Chennai in the year 2016. He's organized and curated the topics for various number of debating competitions, both online and offline. It's great to have you adjudicate this debate for us, Mr. Sachin. Before I begin, I would like to give the audience who are viewing us in this live stream, as well as our debaters, a general idea of how this debate will run. This debate is a 2v2 debate. The first round will be that of the constructive arguments, where every speaker from both the team will have 3 minutes in total to come out and give out their opening statements or their constructive arguments. First, the proposition speaker one, and then the opposition speaker one, and the cycle continues. The second round will be that of the parlay round. The parlay round is a very innovative kind of an idea that was brought forward by the Debaters Guild. This round is made to resemble the civil dialogue between two debaters. This round will be of a total of 5 minutes. There will be no individual speaking time. One speaker from team proposition and one speaker from team opposition will come forward. They'll have a conversation arguing the resolutions to the motion, and this time limit is set to change as per the judge's discretion. And I repeat again, there is no individual speaker time. The round three is that of the rebuttal round, where each speaker, one from team proposition and one from team opposition, will be given 3 minutes each to present their rebuttals. It's very important to note that the speaker who came forward in the parlay round, that is the round two, will not be the speaker in round three. The round four is that of the judges' questioning round, where the adjudicator, over here, Mr. Sachin, will ask a maximum of 3 questions to each team. Each team has 4 minutes to formulate and answer the questions. In this, the proposition goes first, then followed by the opposition. The round four is that of the closing statements. This is the final round of the first quarterfinal of the Biannual Debaters League by the Debaters Guild. In this round, each team will be given a time limit of 1 minute 30 seconds to present their closing statements. In this round, the opposition presents the closing remarks first, followed by the proposition. Again, I would like to repeat a few instructions to the participants. Please keep your timings, keep your chat box open at all times to view the time prompts. Please introduce yourself before you begin presenting. There will be no POIs and POs. I will do as a moderator my duty to fact check if necessary. Also, for the judges around, the judge is requested to ask his questions after posting them in the chat box. I want to tell our viewers that this debate is a pan-Indian debate where participants from all over India are participating. We understand that the opinions presented here in this debate do not represent all the opinions, including that of the audience. So please feel free to use the chat box to put in your opinions about this motion. We shall now begin with the first ever quarterfinal round of the first ever biannual debating league presented to you by the Debaters Guild. Speaker one of team proposition. Are you ready?
Yes. So hello everybody. I'm Masuma Mirza and I'm from Chennai Public School. I study in 12th and that's about it.
You can start in 3, 2, 1. Begin.
Respected adjudicators and worthy opponents, as the first speaker of the proposition, I assure you that one country, two systems was always doomed to fail due to the fundamental political differences between authoritarian China and liberal Hong Kong. Never before had an autocratic, communist-run, single-party dictatorship peacefully absorbed a modern, sophisticated, quasi-democratic capitalist territory. Never before have people who enjoyed free speech, freedom of assembly, a free flow of information, and limited free voting voluntarily relinquished those rights to merge with a country like China, where such freedoms were often ruthlessly suppressed. Hong Kong's autonomy under the one country, two systems appears to be a means to an end. It aims to facilitate a capitalist economy rather than ensuring democracy and social justice. It was a fool's errand from the beginning. The unstoppable momentum of the protest movement is crashing headlong into the immovable object of the Communist Party. The success of the One Country, Two Systems agreement rested on the good faith assumption that the Communist Party would allow Hong Kong to maintain its autonomy without interference until 2047. Instead, we have seen repeated incidents of Beijing undermining it. Beijing's long-term aim is to integrate Hong Kong into the PRC's political system and essentially rule the people, as it does in the mainland. China's growing encroachment on Hong Kong's management on its own political, economic, and social affairs failed to deliver free election as promised in the Basic Law. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party is using COVID-19 as a pretext to throttle Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. Now, Beijing is attempting to take advantage of the lockdown to ram through a new national security law banning treason, sedition, and secession in Hong Kong, which would effectively end the one country, two systems principle established after the British handover. Under the terms of that transition, Hong Kong was supposed to enjoy a high degree of autonomy. But now, China is taking full control of the territory. Chinese president warned that any attempt to divide China would end in crushed bodies and shattered bones. China has also repeatedly violated the Sino-British Declaration and the one country, two systems, open meddling in the local elections, arbitrary interpretations of the Basic Law, and the alleged abductions of the Causeway Bay booksellers are among other allegations. This is concrete evidence proving the unrelenting extent to which the mainland is capable of going in order to establish its dominance over Hong Kong. My teammate will further elaborate on why independence is the only solution to free Hong Kong from China's domineering supremacy, and also about the economic self-sufficiency of Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 1. Team Opposition, is your Speaker 1 ready?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead with your introduction and then let me know when you're about to start.
1 second. Yeah, I'm Aishwarya and I study in TPS South, Bangalore, and that's
Right.
about it.
So your time starts in 3, 2, 1, start.
It would be dishonest, dishonorable, and reckless to pretend that the case for democracy has to be mixed with an argument for independence of Hong Kong, as it does nothing but dilute the plea for democracy within and internationally. Good evening to one and all present here. I'm Aishwarya, the opening speaker from the House that proudly opposes the motion that calls upon China to grant independence to the Special Administrative Region of Hong Kong. Before I begin with my constructive, the opposition House would like to define independence here in accordance with the Montevideo Conventions that laid down the declarative theory of statehood. Independence is when the state has a permanent population, defined territory, a functional government, and finally the legality to get into relations with other states internationally, which Hong Kong sorely lacks, which would lead the opposition to define independence as the declaration of sovereignty of Hong Kong itself. Through the course of this debate, with the substantiation of the following arguments, the opposition House hopes to justify its stance. 1. Emphasize the impossibility of an independent Hong Kong. 2. Outline the repercussions of such a state in the future. And 3. Explore the reason behind its SAR status and how exactly it benefits Hong Kong. Hence, the opposition assumes the burden of proving that Hong Kong is by nature a special administrative region, and advocating for the independence of such a region would severely damage the political and economic stability that has been quintessential in making Hong Kong the economy it is today. In a strictly pragmatic sense, it is impossible for Hong Kong to politically emancipate itself from the political umbrella of People's Republic of China and function with sword relations with one of its biggest and most important trade partners. Moreover, we believe that heightened levels of democracy, as most of Hong Kong's populace are fighting for at the moment, can only be achieved through cooperation and coexistence within the mainland sovereignty, as emancipating itself from it would leave the region ravaged by an economic slump, volatile borders, and constant political unrest, due to a large number of Hong Kong's population itself being very pro-Beijing by orientation, which the opposition would later elaborate on. Furthermore, the reason why Hong Kong's economy is so strong in the first place is the one country, two system structure of its socio-economic and political system. Historically, Hong Kong has always functioned as a self governing region that has constantly been hovered by a greater authority. It was either the British, the Qing dynasty, or currently the mainland. It has achieved all it has while existing in such a political setup. The reason behind this setup being the very strategic location of Hong Kong in terms of international trade, but its sore lacking of a nationally integrated political system, lack of resources within, and its free trade oriented economic setup that is built primarily on the premise of its stability in spheres of social and political spheres. For the above reason, it's always needed to be a part of a system where it's given sufficient autonomy for its population to contribute to peaceable geopolitical existence required to draw in foreign trade, but also an abundance of economic freedom for it to acquire and provide in international trade flows and thrive, which is exactly what the special administrative region under the political umbrella of PRC does. However, what the proposition house is
Speaker, you have exceeded your time limit by 20 seconds. Can you please conclude?
Can I wrap up?
Yeah.
However, what the proposition house is proposing today would mean a complete abandonment of the very system that made Hong Kong one of the world's freest, strongest, and stable economies. And for this and the above stated reasons, we proudly oppose. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Speaker. Speaker 2 of Team Proposition, are you ready?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes. Can you please introduce yourself and please let me know before you begin?
Yes. So hi guys, I'm Saishruti and I'm from Chennai Public School as well, and I'm also a 12th grader. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So you can begin in 3, 2, 1, begin.
Respected adjudicators and worthy opponents, I am the second speaker of the proposition, strongly supporting the independence of Hong Kong from the possessive and rapacious hands of China. Some say that China's approach to the city is no different than a mother's towards her child, except that a mother always has the child's best interests at heart, unlike the tyranny of China, which is nothing but a threat to Hong Kong's autonomy. Picking up from where my teammate left off, the protests, though targeted on China's influence over Hong Kong, are still a part of the bigger fight towards their independence. That's because, want it or not, the umbrella movement planted the seed of separatism in the city, and the only way to get rid of China's authority is the complete independence of Hong Kong, even though the present issue might just be against the improper implementation of the basic law and the one country, two systems principle. Here's the thing, right? These protests are kind of demeaning for China. They have this territory that they say belongs to China, protesting passionately week after week as a very public rejection of that so-called ownership. These are not terrorists or criminals, no matter how much the Chinese Communist Party labels them as such, but rather people who are just fighting to keep the rights that they already have. One of the arguments against splitting up of Hong Kong from China is that Hong Kong would be financially and economically unstable, which is definitely not true, and here's why. The Chinese leadership realizes that for the sake of its own prosperity, China needs a capitalist Hong Kong and not the other way around. Chinese companies take advantage of Hong Kong's favorable environment and professional services that are missing in China. For example, the absence of capital controls and greater international exposure, allowing Hong Kong to serve as an anchor point for global expansion. Secondly, a sound financial infrastructure which mitigates operational costs. And finally, an effective framework which focuses on transparency and prudent minimum standards. Hong Kong, with a strong GDP and Human Development Index, is more than just self sufficient, and it's better off than the mainland financial hubs of Shanghai or Shenzhen for that matter. Underlying all the advantages that Hong Kong possesses over the mainland is the very cause that over 1 million Hong Kongers are out in the streets. It is a generation of young millennials who desire for a future that promises them universal suffrage and a future that they can hopefully dictate and write for themselves. The crisis in which Hong Kong finds itself in and the power of authoritarian China reflects the undying resilience and the hope Hong Kongers have for their future. 2047 is on its way, but it's not here yet. And until then, Hong Kongers have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker 2 of Team Opposition, are you ready?
Am I audible?
Yes, Speaker. Can you please introduce yourself?
Um, Hi, I'm Nikhil from PSBB LLA Bangalore, and I'm the second speaker of Team Opposition.
Okay. Speaker, you can begin in three, two, one. Begin.
Good evening to the honorable proposition and respected jury. I'm Nikhil, the second speaker of Team Opposition. I'd like to start off by saying that it is completely ridiculous to propose the independence of Hong Kong from China. The repercussions on Hong Kong in an attempt to do so will ultimately lead to its downfall. According to the Hong Kong Basic Law, any attempt to reject Article 1 of the law will nullify the previous promises made by China to protect Hong Kong's autonomy. Aside from this law, Hong Kong would not be able to sustain itself without China's support, considering Hong Kong's entire defense expenditure is borne by China, Hong Kong's entire foreign affairs expenditure, which is pretty huge considering it is an economic hub and foreign affairs play a pivotal role in trade, is also borne by China. And finally, and most importantly, 90% of Hong Kong's food imports come in directly from China. China has also said that they will cut off all ties with Hong Kong and will not recognize it as a separate state, even if it does try and gain independence from China. Now imagine Hong Kong does somehow finally gain independence from China. Within hours of independence, the economy is already on the verge of crashing, with its largest trade partner, which accounted for about 50% of its imports, gone. Hong Kong will have no army, and with very little food, Hong Kong will struggle to survive. With that, Hong Kong will have the following. 1. Economic crises, as it does not have the resources required by an independent state to survive. 2. Political instability, as it will no longer be protected by China and will almost always be on the brink of conflict, having violated multiple treaties and agreements with China. 3. Internal conflict, as the opinion on the form of government to be followed in Hong Kong post-independence will differ as it does today, with different communities wanting different systems in the region. 4. Rapidly increasing rates of unemployment and poverty, with 10% of the food imports it used to have and minimal job opportunities. 5. Failed in an attempt to liberate itself from the PRC, which will only worsen the conditions of Hong Kongers and the state overall, as it is still fully dependent on China. 6. It is important to understand, despite how the proposition draws it out to make it seem like China is dependent on Hong Kong for its economy, we must actually focus on real facts. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region economic contribution to China constitutes a mere 2.73% of its GDP. On the other hand, as mentioned earlier, 90% of Hong Kong's food imports come from China due to its lack of agricultural and meat resources within. In addition to all of this, I'd like to talk about the new national security law that has been misunderstood by majority of the people as a law that partially takes away Hong Kong's autonomy over their jurisprudence. It is extremely important to note that the national security law covers the 4 categories of criminal offense, which are the following: secession, subversion of state power, terrorist activities, and collusion with foreign and external forces to endanger national security. All of these 4 are very serious crimes and require the intervention of Beijing, as this does not only pose a threat to Hong Kong's sovereignty, but also poses a threat to China as a whole, given the strategic location of Hong Kong. With this, the opposition rests their case. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. With this, we'll move on to the second round of the quarterfinals. The second round is that of the Parlay round, and as explained earlier, this round will be of 5 minutes, where one speaker from both the team will come forward, and the total time will be of 5 minutes. There will be no individual speaker time. The time limit can change if the judge wants to. So, speakers from both the teams, are you ready?
Yes.
So, you can begin in 3, 2, 1, start.
So here's why.
One sec. Let's just go straight to the chase instead of beating around the bush. We'll just go about it this way because obviously we have different opinions, and we'll solve it this way. So obviously, every country, in order to survive, has some minimum requirements, right? So we'll just answer the following questions. All right. Does Hong Kong have an army?
Let me just make this clear that China is dependent on Hong Kong for its trade. So if China is already, Hong Kong people have the right to self-determination, and Hong Kongers have the right to determine their own future, as stated in the International
Um,
Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
Okay.
Hong
If
Kong
you've done research on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, you will also know that China has not only has not ratified nor signed the document. Therefore, it doesn't even apply to China in the first place. Besides, right now we're talking about Hong Kong having an army, and right now the entire army is funded by China, which means once post-independence, will Hong Kong have an army? It's a yes or no question. Please answer.
the international community is supporting Hong Kong. So
So
if
are you telling me the countries
China,
around Hong Kong are going to go provide Hong Kong with an army?
even if Hong Kong gains independence, it won't be economically unstable because, in fact, it is the financial hub of China. So China wouldn't.
It is. You realize in the last part of my speech, I did mention that 2.73% of China's GDP comes from Hong Kong, and the rest is generated on its own, which is why it dominates world markets without China, without Hong Kong. And if you look at it, Hong Kong's economy or Hong Kong's GDP is not included in China's GDP simply because it is economically autonomous, right? And just wait before we go to the other part of this. Can you just answer, does Hong Kong have an army, or will Hong Kong have an army post-independence?
Yes, it will.
How?
Hong Kong has the finance, so it can even have the resources after it separates from.
Okay, so 50% of the trade is gone, okay? And
Even one day of protest gathered around 2 million people.
Okay, also, you are aware that the protests aren't actually for the full independence of Hong Kong from China. They're actually against.
China was the first one to violate the basic law and the Sino
Hold on. Okay,
So
so you claim that Hong Kong wants independence, but do you realize that the democratically elected party in Hong Kong itself is pro-Beijing?
that is because Beijing elected it. Hong Kongers have no say.
Democratically
Hong
elected
Kongers have no say in the elections of Hong Kong itself. Beijing is the one who is controlling all this, and that is why they are protesting. And China would never agree to, independence of Hong Kong. And China is also not giving democracy to Hong Kong. So China needs to,
Hong Kong is a democratic. It has its own. It has partial autonomy, and its leaders are democratically elected. By just for your information.
But why would you call it democracy when China is controlling it?
Because it still has certain feature. It isn't a fully independent state. That's one. And two, it still has certain features that don't, comply with all.
In 2014,
because the people
I point out that in 2014, the umbrella movement started, and that was for independence, and the Hong Kongers didn't even realize it. And now China would not agree to Hong Kongers' terms. So that's why they
don't want independence. If the majority party, democratically elected in Hong Kong, doesn't want independence, why would the people want it if the majority has already voted against
the majority party is controlled by China? So that is why we want.
Have you read Hong Kong Basic Law? Have you read the Hong Kong Basic Law? It says specifically that Hong Kong will have a democratically elected leader, which is Carrie Lam right now.
Exactly. Can I say that Hong Kongers want Carrie Lam to resign because she's called as the puppet of Chinese government?
Why would they vote for her then?
They won't vote for her. She was appointed by the Chinese government.
You know what? Let's put that aside, okay? Because that again is just going back and forth, and it's not based on actual stats. Now, Hong Kong won't have an army. Wait. Hong Kong won't have an army. Okay, Hong Kong won't be self-sufficient considering 90% of its food comes directly from China because it has a lack of food resources, including meat and plants and whatever not. Now, thirdly, as I mentioned, majority of the people in Hong Kong still don't want independence and proper sovereignty from China simply because the majority party is pro-Beijing. They are well aware of the fact that they cannot live without China, or they cannot be self-sustained without.
Please stop.
Okay.
Speakers, please. Sachin, do you want to extend this round? Sachin?
Can you give them 30 seconds to wrap up whatever point they have to make right now?
Okay, Sachin, I'll give them a 40 seconds extension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Your time starts now.
So I would just like to say that no reasonable person can assert today that Hong Kong maintains a high degree of autonomy because of all the because of what China
so let's put it this way: there are two regions in China that have some sort of autonomy. That is Macau and Hong Kong, and both of them are given their political autonomy. Although whatever affects their sovereignty directly affects China's sovereignty, because they both have strategic positions in China. And Hong Kong overall is not self-sustainable. They will not have an army. They can't have economic trade because
they can build their resources when they have the finance.
right. So here's why other countries won't trade with Hong Kong, because China is against it, and China is the
Please stop. The time's up for this round. Thank you,
Thank
speakers.
you.
We'll now move on to the third round of the quarterfinal one. The third round is that of the rebuttal round. Please make sure, speakers, that ones who've already spoken in the Parlay round do not come forward for this round. You will be negatively marked for it. So, team proposition, is your speaker ready?
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You can begin in 3, 2, 1, begin.
So I would like to start off by rebutting some of the points of the opposition. So the first speaker of the opposition began with a quote saying, "A movement for independence would deviate from democracy." Let me tell you something. It's definitely not going to deviate from democracy, because independence movement would only strengthen the call for democracy. And since China has already violated the terms mentioned in the basic law, it almost makes the treaty obsolete. And China said that the historical document has no longer had any practical significance. Secondly, they talked about how Hong Kong's economy is completely dependent upon China. I think I've already pointed that out in my speech, that Hong Kong is China's largest trading partner and also the largest source of foreign direct investment for China after Hong Kong and London. Hong Kong contributes to most of China's trade. And if you're trying to bring out the fact that how China is dependent, I mean how Hong Kong is dependent on China, it's because China made Hong Kong dependent on China. That's why it is like that. And I don't understand, how can you say Carrie Lam was democratically elected? Come on. Everybody knows she wasn't, and the Beijing Communist Party has uh, a major role to play in this. Even though they call Hong Kong has autonomy, has democracy, we all know the people of Hong Kong know they have absolutely no say. And especially China is now violating the political stability. To begin with, China never had the right to interfere into the political stability of Hong Kong. China had authority only over the foreign affairs and the defense. So I don't understand how China could just violate the entire treaty. And now let me point out that Hong Kong is actually a self-made country without any aid from China, because it was built by the refugees from China who fled from the Communist Party. And China had absolutely no interest in Hong Kong until it became the financial hub of Asia. And that was not because of China. And this and a number of other instances that the proposition proposed to you today shows that China never misses an opportunity to use Hong Kong for their own good and not in good faith. The Hong Kongers have had enough, and even though they're fighting for the democracy, it is not possible to get democracy unless you're independent. You need freedom to get democracy. How can you fight for democracy unless you're not independent? I don't know how that works. I'm sorry. And also, the opposition also mentioned about defense, right? Defense, and how Hong Kong would not have an army. I think my teammate already brought out that point, how financially stable Hong Kong is, and it has all the financial resources, given its GDP, given its GDP and its Human Development Index. And also, Chinese elite would never let a war happen against Hong Kong, because that would threaten their own position. China has authority over the defense and foreign affairs, and definitely Chinese elite is not going to let China to go against a war, because that will threaten the economic stability of China. So yes, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, speaker. Team opposition, is your speaker ready?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you can begin in 3, 2, 1, begin.
I'd like to start this rebuttal session by questioning the very understanding of the motion by the proposition house. Is the proposition house by any chance under the impression that this motion advocates for China to completely integrate Hong Kong under its political wing, because that's not what the motion is about. This motion talks about Hong Kong gaining independence as a sovereign country, and the reason we're against it is because we support the one country two system structure of the Hong Kong's current economy. Why do we support it is what we've been trying to outline throughout our past two speeches. And moreover, the second speaker brought out about how the protests that are happening are currently with the intent of getting independent, of getting a sovereign status for Hong Kong, but that's not what the protests are about. Are you aware that the protests are actually about the 5 demands? The protest first started out against the extradition bill because they thought that was a sore violation of their rights. And this too, as the second speaker had already substantiated, doesn't go against any of the rights because it has multiple reasons as to why it actually supports what Hong Kong actually stands for. Moreover, the 5 demands that the protests are still continuing for is about an investigation into police brutality attacks that have happened during the riot. And the speaker also rebutted my point against how movement for independence doesn't dilute the plea for democracy. It's important we understand that democracy and independence are 2 different things we're talking about here, as we've already defined independence as sovereignty in this case, right? So independence here would mean that Hong Kong would be a country of its own. Of course, it could follow a democratic system, a dictatorship. That doesn't matter because all you're pleading for is independence. However, Hong Kong is already a democratic country under the special administrative region of the Article 31 of People's Republic of China's constitution. Plus, the opposition stance seems to be under the impression that you think currently China is trying to take Hong Kong under its wing, but China would have nothing to benefit out of making Hong Kong into a socialist state. The only reason Hong Kong matters so much to China is because it's a capitalist state, because it has freedom, because it's very politically empowered to make decisions of its own. 30 seconds. Yeah, that will be all.
Thank you, speaker.
Can I add something?
You have 10 seconds worth time left, so please make it quick and short.
Right, and that was a fleeting point about how the international community supports Hong Kong and all. You should understand that the international community supports Hong Kong with its own intent in mind. Do you really think US stripping Hong Kong of its special status in terms of trade or...
Speaker, your time is over.
Can I wrap up?
Yeah, just wrap up your question.
Huh. Or of India recently bringing up Hong Kong in the United Nations. All of that is with their own intentions and not considering Hong Kong's right to self-determination or Hong Kong becoming a country to protect its own rights. That's not the case, and I think it's very naive to think of that way. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker. We'll now move on to the 4th round. That is the judges questioning round.
I texted the questions in the chat box. Proposition, can you hear me?
Yes, hello. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So my 3 questions are, well, they're typed out pretty big. I am sorry for that. Here's the basic idea behind why I'm asking each of these questions. My first question is asking, in Hong Kong, there are a number of political parties which support the rule of China. Okay, there isn't as much public support as you'd want for Hong Kong to actually want independence or for Hong Kong to be fighting for their rights, which is exactly what you're arguing for. Okay, if Hong Kong is so divided with what they want for their country, why is what the proposition is arguing for even something to be considered, considering that even if you gave them independence, they won't have proper direction as a country to have a single political stance or mindset? So what says that there'll be any sort of political stability in Hong Kong when they're so divided this way? Do you guys understand the first question?
Yes.
Great. My second question is, the opposition brought this up pretty well. Since Hong Kong holds a lot of dependence on China, what alternatives and viable sources exist for it to look toward to continue developing without the fervent support from China? What I'm basically asking is what alternatives are there for Hong Kong to remain viable economically, militarily, and basically stabilize as a country in forms apart from simply being political? Do you guys understand the question?
Yes.
Great. And my last question is, given the numerous benefits that Hong Kong receives from China, right? Like they get their trade, they get their military, they get all these sort of benefits. And you're arguing for a lot of things. Mainly what the proposition is arguing for is our human rights, right? Like most of your arguments are basically the concept of morality. You guys are arguing a lot for the democratic principles, and you guys are arguing a lot for those type of contexts rather than what the opposition is vying for, which is the economy and the military. What says that what you are arguing for has to take precedence over what the opposition is arguing for? Why is your, I want you to tell me why your thing is more important.
Okay.
Because you have 1 minute left to formulate and answer the question just.
Yeah, I would like to answer the second question. My teammate will answer the rest. So I would like to give the example of Singapore and Malaysia. Singapore split from Malaysia, but then it still imports all of its food from other countries of the world. So it's not like if what alternatives or sources. Hong Kong has so many sources to bring out funds, or Hong Kong has the funds, but it can even import food from other countries of the world. That's
Yes. So thank you
Moderator,
for asking the question.
am I allowed to?
Allowed to what, sir?
Just hold on a sec. Moderator, can I reply to her answer? Just like as a
do you have like a
secondary
follow-up
question?
question on it, or no, I don't think we have the time for
Yes,
a
I do.
follow-up question. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, Sachin. Please, speaker, continue with your answer.
Yes. So the third question of the judge is economic and military gain. So Hong Kong gets a lot of benefits from China, right? Why we don't feel that the kind of benefits that any kind of benefits for that matter, that Hong Kong gets from China, nothing is worth giving up their own freedom and their own independence. So it doesn't matter whatever Hong Kong gets from China. It doesn't matter all of that. It doesn't even stand in front of the kind of freedom they
Speaker, your
can
time
get
is
if
up. Can
they
you please
get
conclude the
independence.
answer?
Yes, and I would also combine the answer for both the second and the third one. And I would like to say that it's better to get freedom and complete independence from China. Instead, China poking its nose all the time in political affairs and everything, starting from their elections and they violating their human rights. And that's what the proposition stands for. Independence is worth the struggle to become economically sustainable. Independence and freedom is worth any kind of struggle to become economically as well as militarily stable. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker. Sachin, can you please first read out your questions to the team opposition and then type them down?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Okay, great. So question to you is, so let's establish something real quick. Hong Kong and China have vast cultural differences, okay, like fundamentally, because of the fact that Hong Kong was given away by the British, and because of the fact that the one country, two systems policy establishes a fundamental difference of government functioning in both China and Hong Kong. And seeing that there's so much evidence supporting that they are just unable to coexist as two systems under one nation, why does the opposition think that it's still viable for Hong Kong to function as it is? Because it clearly shows that these two political systems in these two different locations, when trying to, I'd say, converge, or when trying to keep them together, has failed, or you could argue that's failed. Why should it continue to function this way? Why is independence not the right step, despite the fact that coexisting like this has caused so many political issues, both within the country of China and on international politics. You guys understand the question? I'll type it later on anyway. Did he say yes?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, great. My second question is, okay, so what we've noticed in China from the beginning of taking over Hong Kong is that they've basically systematically disabled and intervened on everything that Hong Kong does, right? They have forced Hong Kong to become dependent on China, whether Hong Kong likes it or not, right? At least you can argue for that. You can say that because China, given the way the law works in Hong Kong, because China has the ability to interpret how the law functions in Hong Kong, basically everything that goes on in Hong Kong has slowly been made to depend on China to a point where, as the opposition, as you guys have proven, Hong Kong can no longer be self-sufficient and can no longer depend on itself and has to depend on China so much that if it went into independence, it's so hard to look for an alternative for its economic and military benefits. So my question to you is, given that China is making them rely on them so much by systematically disabling their political system, making sure that they're economically dependent on China, what does that make for China as a country that is trying to help another, you could say, area or nation? Why is it that does the opposition not view this as something that is morally wrong? And can the opposition argue to me as to why it's okay for a large country like China to simply create this sort of de-evolution, you could call it, on a certain location simply because they want to have that piece of land and own it? Do you guys understand the question?
Yes.
Do you have like a clarification to make? Okay, great. Yeah, I know that was like a weird explanation. Okay, third question. This is simple. Why should China as a stakeholder not give independence to Hong Kong? What do they gain? I want you guys to think about this from the perspective of China and China only. What does China in this debate have to gain from giving or not giving independence to Hong Kong? Did you guys understand the third question?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll
Can we start?
put them in the chat
Speakers,
box.
team opposition, your time has started. You have 4 minutes to formulate and answer them.
So your first question was why is independence not the solution to Hong Kong? Correct? I can't see because have you typed them out? Or at least from what I remember, it's why is independence not the solution to China? I mean to Hong Kong.
No, my first question is mainly because of the fact that there's this huge difference in the way that both of them work and the way that their systems are, because there are these fundamental differences. And because we received enough evidence to show that China simply does not want Hong Kong to function this way, why should China not give independence to Hong Kong? Why can't they just let them go?
Okay, so I think the first and the third question seem pretty similar. And for us to think from China's perspective as to why they don't want to give Hong Kong independence, there are numerous reasons to this. One is a strategic location in the South China Sea. Two is the fact that historically Hong Kong did belong to China. Even though they do have cultural differences, they also do have a lot of shared cultures. And again, since there is a cultural difference in between the Chinese people and Hong Kongers, and same thing for Macau, that is simply why they are given partial autonomy over their region. Now, for the second question, you asked us why China has slowly made Hong Kong depend on China. So we just want to be like, as to clarify with the motion, we don't stand by China because we do understand that they have a huge number of human right violations and so on, and we don't stand by them because obviously we are for the betterment of the world. But what we do believe is that the number of human right violations and the percentage of Hong Kong surviving as a single, as an independent sovereign nation, they aren't quite on the same level, and one frankly outweighs the other by a pretty huge amount, which in this case we believe is survival of Hong Kong without China. And we don't support the fact that China has made Hong Kong dependent upon them. However, we do believe that after Hong Kong's initial independence, after they were left alone as a separate territory, the reason China had to go back is simply because Hong Kong frankly didn't have the resources to be self-sufficient, and again the historical reason, and it could be a possible anti-China nation growing at the footsteps of China. So yeah.
Could I add on as the first speaker? Is that allowed, moderator?
Please go ahead.
Right. And I'd also like to note that the motion of this debate is debating whether China should grant independence to Hong Kong or not, and not the morality of what China has been doing to Hong Kong throughout. So in that debate, of course, we wouldn't take the same stance as we have today, because we don't stand by China as the second speaker already spoke about. What we do stand by is, right now, if Hong Kong was given independence, we don't think that'll work. But we absolutely believe that what has happened over the years is completely immoral. But this is not a debate of morality. So we stand by our stance of opposing the motion today.
Thank you, speakers. Sachin, have they answered all your questions? Adjudicator?
Yeah, they have.
Okay, so
Yes, they
that
have
brings
answered all the questions.
us. Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, speakers. So that brings us to the final round of the first qualifying round of the Biannual Debating League. It is that of the closing statements. So in this round, the team opposition will go first and then the team proposition. Each speaker will have a time limit of 1 minute 30 seconds. Speaker 1 of team opposition, are you ready?
Yes. Can I start?
Yes, you can begin in 3, 2, 1, begin.
About an hour ago, the opposition had assumed the burden of proving the impossibility of an independent Hong Kong, the negative repercussions of such a state, and how it's more beneficial for it to remain an SAR under China. In support of which, we established strong arguments ranging from Hong Kong's dependency on China, its inability to function as a sovereign nation, the futility of combining the cost for democracy with that of sovereign independence, and outlining the political fragmentation within Hong Kong itself, and strongly affirming that China has given it utmost autonomy as agreed in the Sino-British Joint Declaration at time of handover. However, the proposition through the course of the debate insisted on arguing that the national security law was but an ulterior motive driven move by the PRC to exercise complete sovereignty over Hong Kong, which we have time and time again proved, citing how futile and absolutely unnecessary it would be for China to strip Hong Kong of its SAR status and integrate it into its communist regime. Furthermore, the proposition through the course of the debate also cited international support for Hong Kong independence, which once again the opposition clarified as a means to pursue their own political interest and doesn't take into consideration the people of Hong Kong. On the other hand, Hong Kong remaining SAR within China is what serves the best interest of the Hong Kong populace. Moreover, the entire stance of the proposition rests on the assumption that China's intent is to integrate it into itself. Hence, independence is the best means to escape this. But then again, we have presented time and time again that the reasons as to why...
Your time is up. Can you please conclude?
Yeah. Time and time again as the reason as to why China has nothing to benefit by taking Hong Kong's freedom in the economic, political, and social spheres, thus invalidating their stance as a whole. For this reason, the opposition strongly believes China should not grant independence to the SAR of Hong Kong.
Thanks a lot, team opposition. Team proposition, is your speaker ready?
Yes.
So you can begin in 3, 2, 1, begin.
The greatest gift you can give your children are the roots of responsibility and the wings of independence. And this is exactly what the Hong Kongers are determined to provide for posterity. The relationship of Hong Kong and China is far more complex than most people realize. It involves politics, economics, trade, and above all, the people, Hong Kongers, as they are known, who lived here for years under the influence and ways of former ruler Great Britain, are wary about China's intentions and indignant about the mainland's meddling in its political affairs. Caught between its British past and its Chinese future, Hong Kongers seem determined to retain their democratic institutions and their cultural identity. The century long separation between the People's Republic of China and Hong Kong created gaps that cannot be easily bridged, even if the two are officially one country. China's move to impose the new law during a global pandemic risked undermining trust in governments and international cooperation. Distinguished judges and worthy opponents, the proposition would like to remind you that the motion for today is that China should grant independence and not whether it will work, but we have proved that it will work during the course of this debate. Hong Kongers are completely self-made. They tolerate great wealth. They work so much to move up the ladder. They cannot stand the fact that after the end of the colonial era under Britain, where they had to keep quiet, now they have to dance to the tunes of China. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. We've now come to the end of this debate. I would request our adjudicator, Sachin, to give out a general review if he wants to.
Yeah, I do. Can I?
Yeah, adjudicator, you can go ahead with a general review.
Okay. Uh, yeah. So this debate was good, actually. I'm very surprised. Good job on both sides. You guys had a lot of good research, and I liked the arguments that were going on here. We had arguments in various contexts within this debate, which is probably what made this debate the most interesting as it should be. Because the assumption I made when I first came was that I'll just allow moral argumentation, and I'll hear the opposition saying that this just isn't possible and it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. I'm glad that there was a lot of strategy going on in terms of the hypothetical scenario that Hong Kong would get independence. So, what would be the result of this? What could happen? And I'm glad that this hypothetical wasn't simply a hypothetical. It was a hypothetical provided with a lot of evidence to make a good enough assumption instead of a simple, baseless hypothetical. So I think in that context, this debate was really done. I'm glad that there are a lot of objective statements made in the debate, and we didn't go too much into the feelings of those in Hong Kong, despite the fact that this debate can easily swerve in that direction. I'm glad that the debaters didn't take it there and they took it to other places. This was a good debate. So good job to both sides. I think both sides are very good speakers and very good debaters, and I hope you guys continue debating. And yeah, that's all I have there. Thank you.
Thank you, respected adjudicator. Thank you to all the debaters present. Thank you to everyone who had joined the live stream. We've now come to the end of the first quarterfinal round. Your results will be out soon, guys. So grab onto your seats. And I don't know if you guys sweat throughout the debate. I did because it was amazing. So people who are viewing this video live, this debate live, there's also a link to our second quarterfinal, which will be starting in a few minutes, very soon, and which again has a very interesting topic. So hang on to that. And this is Ayush Hai, your moderator for the first ever quarterfinal round of the first ever biannual debating league presented to you by Debaters Guild. Please go follow us on Instagram. We have weekly debates, which we used to do before this league. We'll resume them right after we get done with the league. Supporters, help us become the biggest debating club in India, and we shall meet you soon again. Thank you, guys.